We're going to now move into a topic that we need to discuss, but we haven't discussed much yet, which is privacy. We will have another talk this afternoon. I'm really delighted to introduce John Grant. John is the civil liberties engineer at Palantir Technologies. John joined Palantir in September 2010 as their first civil liberties engineer. I don't know if that's a trend that's spreading, but it's impressive. Previously, John served for nearly a decade as an advisor in the U.S. Senate. He began as an aide to Senator Peter Fitzgerald before joining the staff of former presidential candidate and member of the Senate Republican leadership, Senator Lamar Alexander. He is a lawyer by training. He has worked in many different areas, from homeland security and intelligence to privacy now. I'm not going to say much more. I want to say that I met John, I think, at another conference a couple of years ago here, and was so impressed with what they're doing at Palantir that I wanted to get him to come and talk to you about the way that they're using or they're incorporating privacy into engineering and business decision making. So welcome, John Grant.
Cool. All right. Hi. So this session is going to be a little bit different than the last few. And actually, I'm going to time it so I make sure I don't run along here. And that it's going to be much more of a discussion. So you guys are going to do a lot more of the talking. We'll dispense with the microphones. Just make sure you yell out so we can hear it, and I'll repeat it so that people can get it. But quickly, just to run through the introduction, since Anno covered it really well. Lawyer, intelligence oversight. I feel compelled to say that I was doing Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security intelligence component oversight. So I did not know anything about the National Security Agency work of the last decade or so, which puts me in the same boat as about 90% of Congress. 4 years ago, I went to Palantir, and just a bit of career advice for you guys. Palantir had been really interested in privacy and civil liberties. They had some outside consultants that were working on it, but they did not have an internal team. So I actually wrote a job description and sent it to Palantir and said, you should hire someone to do this job. And then I interviewed remarkably well against that job description. And am now part of the founding member of the privacy and civil liberties team today, which actually has 7 civil liberties engineers on it. So what we're going to do today is I actually want to walk through a scenario and think about and get you guys to start thinking about how does a data analytics company deal with privacy? How do you think about privacy? And then how do you actually, as you're designing your capabilities, how do you build privacy into them? And the reason I'm going to have you guys kind of participate in this is because it's one thing for me to stand up here and tell you, here's what you think about, here's what you do. It's another thing to actually have to think about it for yourself. And I find that when people do that, they actually realize it's a lot more complicated than you think. And we especially deal with this with engineers at Palantir when we come in and we say, hey, I'm worried about this capability from a privacy perspective. And they'll just say, OK, what's the right answer? And of course, as a lawyer, there are no right answers. So it's difficult to get people to think about. So we think through these kinds of exercises. So we're going to do an entirely hypothetical situation here. But we just formed a startup company. Boom, done. I expect 10 venture capitalists come rushing the stage right now. So we just formed a startup company. It's a social media data analytics company. So we want to build a product that analyzes Twitter, that looks at data in Twitter, does some analysis around Twitter. Social media analytics. Everybody wants this. Law enforcement, intelligence, business is probably a great area to be in. And what I want to do is set up the hypothetical. So imagine the country of Fredonia. Does anybody get that reference? OK, good. A few people do. If you don't, it's the Marx Brothers. It's from the movie Duck Soup. It's still funny to this day, even though it's probably about 80 years old. Go watch it later. The country of Fredonia. This is some latest news from Fredonia. Cybercrime, 10 arrested for glorifying terrorism. And specifically, someone was arrested after it was an assassination of a political leader in this country. And after this, someone tweeted, put them, and the hypothetical or the parentheticals are from the newspaper coverage of this, put them, the politicians, in a row or side by side, and give me an AK-47, and you'll see how I get rid of these fascists. Someone was arrested for that tweet. And that's it, just for the tweet. Actually, a couple tweets along those lines, but nothing more than just tweeting these sentiments. So, first question. There's going to be 3 options here, so we'll take a quick survey. A law enforcement, set it up a little bit. A law enforcement agency from Fredonia comes to us and says, we'll give you $50 million to help build our social analytics system, our social media analytics system, we want to find more of these tweets, put people in jail who are glorifying terrorism. Okay? So 3 options. We can say no, absolutely not. We just don't like the scenario, no. We can say yes, absolutely. This is a great noble goal. Let's do it. Let's help build this capability for these guys. Or we might say, I need to know a little bit more about Fredonia before I can decide whether I want to do this or not. So, quick survey. How many people say absolutely not? Do not do this. Okay, a couple people in the how many people say yes, absolutely, great, worthy goal, let's do it? All right, you're hedging your bets. And I'm assuming the rest of you are going to say, I need to know a little bit more about Fredonia, yes? Okay, all right, so let's start with the no's. We say no. No, we're not going to do it. The first thing you will get, maybe 10 minutes later, is a phone call, and you look at the caller ID, and it is your lead investor. You pick up the phone, and he says, you just turned down $50 million. You are a brand new startup. I gave you some money, but I was hoping to get some of it back at some point. So what are you doing? So somebody give me, well, justify it. You need to justify it to your investor. Why did you say no? The people who said no, just somebody yell out, why did you say no? Unethical. Because why?
Because freedom of speech is important.
Freedom of speech is important. Boom. Great reason. Other reason? Anybody else have another reason? Or is that primarily where people are going? Freedom of speech is important. Yeah?
Seems like an overreaction.
Overreaction. Oh, so okay, so an overreaction to the situation in the country. Okay, good.
Nobody will use our service because we're giving away our information.
Yeah, so reputational issue, right? Okay, so there may be a problem here. Okay. And it may hurt the use of social media, which we find valuable, which we want to analyze. Okay, so a few good justifications in here. One of the tough ones, I want to talk a little bit more about the speech one, because that's a tough one. So what we're saying is freedom of speech is critical. It's important, right? We're a U.S. company. We just incorporated in the United States. So we're taking and the U.S. is a country where freedom of speech is sort of high. It's one of the only things the Supreme Court can agree on at this point, pretty much unanimously, except in one case of abortion-related speech, which wasn't really about speech. Is that a reasonable framework that we can apply going forward? Do you think we get any customers in Europe if we took that view, the absolutist view on freedom of speech? Anybody? All right. Tends to be in Europe that freedom of speech, or speech is trumped by a lot of other things, including privacy. So this is not, saying no is not at all an unreasonable viewpoint to take. And articulating some of these reasons that we're talking about here, which is that speech is important, and as a company, this is our value. We value speech. That's really useful. And then that's really great. The question is, can you survive as a company if you do that? And that's a tough question to answer, especially if you're only going to be able to work in the United States. And by the way, in spite of the United States commitment to speech, this is a really gray area. Social media is a really gray area. Social media analytics are a really gray area. And it's not 100% clear. Obviously, they don't have direct laws that say, hey, you can't say this. And certainly if this were challenged directly in the Supreme Court, it would probably fall. They would probably say this is unconstitutional. But it doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of other social media analytics programs that start to really get close to this line of speech. All right, so let's go to the maybes. I need to know more about Fredonia. What do you need to know? What do you want to know about Fredonia?
Free speech laws.
Do they have free speech laws? Okay. What else?
The checks bounce.
Do their checks bounce? All right. A very good question from a business perspective. Do their checks bounce? All right. What else? Yeah. Why? So yeah, or why do they ask us, or why do they have this law?
Well, why do they ask you just search for that sentence? What is the intention?
Right. Okay. So yeah, what happens? What happens? So we know from the context, we know that people apparently go to jail, but it is probably relevant to us to know, how long do they go to jail? Is it, or is the punishment even worse? Are they beheaded? Are they shot against the wall? Whatever. So yeah, you do want to know the consequences. Here's a challenging question, though. How do you also need to think about what consequences are appropriate or what are not. Is a $1 million fine okay? No. Is a $500,000 fine okay? Okay. 3 years in jail okay? 5 years in jail okay? 10 years in jail okay? So you got to think about all through that. What other things do we want to know about this country? Yeah.
Maybe they really have a prolific problem with online terrorism and spreading. They need to follow that.
Yes. What is the present day context? Why do they have this law? Is this a serious problem? Is this a problem of interest? Anything? What else? Yeah.
Who was asking the question? Because the police are asking the question, and it is a private person
So this scenario is a law enforcement agency. The law enforcement wants help wants to use our system to prosecute the crime. Yeah.
I mean, I'd want to know about the political system. What if this is Nazi Germany?
Yes, political system. What kind of government do they have? Presumably, we're going to be leaning towards a democracy. Someone define democracy. Are there any democracies in the world today? Yeah, exactly. Is the United States a democracy? Yes, it's a democracy. Everybody votes. No, it's a democracy. It's gerrymandered so that only corporate interests win elections. Either way. So some of this is how we do thinking at Palantir and what countries to work with and stuff like that. And we once talked about this with our advisors. And we definitely had at one point eliminated the United States as a democracy. We kind of had to bring it back in. We're going to continue to have customers. Okay. What else? What else are we missing? So we talked about present-day context. Does anyone care about historical context? So you mentioned Nazi Germany, present day. What about Germany today? Could we understand if so? In Germany, it's a crime. Hate speech is a crime, right? And Holocaust denial is a crime. Would we kind of understand why Germany has these laws today? So do you think that's persuasive if there's a historical context for that? Some? Okay. What else? Yeah.
What about the country in the future?
What's that?
The country in the future. So you sell this capability to the country so that they can analyze this information in particular, but the country in the future changes. They keep the capability, and maybe they use this capability to analyze and address other types of issues which, at a present state, you would think they're immoral to analyze.
Right, yeah. What if this was Egypt 5 years ago, when the United States was fairly comfortable with Egypt for various reasons, and then suddenly the Egyptian government changes, now suddenly it changes again. What if it becomes more Islamist extremist or Islamist extremist? Suddenly we've lost control of the product. Who knows what's going to happen? Let's see, make sure I get everything here. What else? Anything else? Yeah.
What are they defining exactly as a threat? And because you read this and it's implied as a threat, but it doesn't actually say they're going to kill anybody.
Right, okay, so yeah, how are they defining this? Yeah, sorry, I keep passing you over.
Do they have alternatives to us? If we say no, what would they do?
Right, will they walk away? Can we negotiate with them? Are we the only people in the world that create this product or make this product as well as we do? Yeah.
What kind of precedent we're setting by allowing this?
Yeah, what is this? If we deal with this country and as we make this decision, how will it affect us moving forward? And can we articulate again to our investor who's going to call and say, okay, why are you doing this one but not this one? Can we articulate this in an objective way, or is this just a subjective decision? So a couple. I want to bounce to the next question here. So a couple others that we didn't cover. How is this enforced? So this rule, this glorifying terrorism rule, is it enforced against things that are sort of clearly like, Al-Qaeda is great, I love Al-Qaeda, everybody should join Al-Qaeda and blow things up? And is it the opposition party is amazing and I love the opposition party and we should really think about changing governments or changing who's in control of the government? If it's enforced against one or the other, that's significant, right? Because maybe they're using this. So Germany, hate speech. If they're enforcing hate speech law to shut the opposition up, that's one thing. If they're using it to shut down things that, okay, a lot of us, just as a value judgment, think, yeah, I don't really like these kinds of things that people say, then that may make a difference. Another one. Who is their due process? Do people go to court, or do they just get thrown into prison? Another thing to think about. And then oversight. Is there any oversight of this agency? How are they controlled? Does somebody actually come in and make sure they're doing the right thing? So all these are factors that you want to think about in going forward with this. So next point. Yes. All right. So we want to go forward. We decide to go forward with this deployment. And we decide to build this product for them. And now we've got it. Now, so some of us probably disagreed, right? We probably said, no, we shouldn't have done this. There were a few hands that said no. Some of us might say, still don't like this country. It's not the greatest country to work with, and I'm still uncomfortable with it. You're on the privacy engineering team. Your options are quit. You can go to that well one time. Just FYI. The next option is try to make it better. How are you going to build the product, identify the privacy concerns, and then figure out how can I build this product to mitigate those concerns, or at least to give people the tools to mitigate those concerns, right? You want your goal to, or your goal should be, is it better, I can make this better that we're there, that we're doing this thing, than if we weren't there doing this thing, right? So, next question. We've got this product. It is a social media analytics tool. It searches social media. This is very Silicon Valley. I needed a whiteboard. It searches social media. It can do some basic analysis on social media. It's going to look at people who retweet something like this. It's going to look at people who follow, people who tweet this kind of information. So maybe you can use that as a way to identify other people who might be breaking this law. Maybe it does sentiment analysis, so some sort of automated tool to think through, are these tweets positive, are they negative? It'd be a quick way to sort of parse through the vast amount of tweets, and so forth. So that's your tool. That's the rough parameters of your tool. What do you worry about? From a privacy perspective, what kinds of things do you worry about with this specifically? So let's drill down into this. What kinds of things, how would you worry about this tool being abused in this country?
Guilt by association.
Guilt by association. All right, so people who are connected to this person, they are assumed to be terrorists. They're subjected to surveillance. What else? Yeah? Sarcasm. Sarcasm, that's a good one. So I'm going to call that, so sarcasm is interesting, especially in social media analytics, because it actually requires you to get more data to figure it out, right? So we'll call that context, right? If I write, if my friend tweets, I'm going to kill John, and you look at that tweet alone, you would say, oh, John is in danger. If you look and you see that 5 minutes before that, I tweeted an embarrassing picture of them from a party, then you're going to say, okay, he didn't actually mean he's going to kill John. I don't know, maybe the picture's really embarrassing, but let's assume no. And so that provides you information that you needed to know. So context, understanding. So context misunderstanding, let's call it that. What else? Yeah?
Other forms of false positives or sources?
Yeah, other source of false positives, inaccuracy. This is really helpful because, of course, no one can read my handwriting, so it's very useful for me to write it all up there. What else? What else would we be worried about?
Slippery slopes.
Slippery slopes, meaning?
Today it's blatant. Tomorrow they say, oh, well, we'd like you to start flagging these and these things. And so then you wind up in a situation that's a little bit unacceptable.
Slippery slope, yeah. So they started just looking at these really blatantly obvious tweets, like, let's kill politicians with machine guns, and then now they're looking at, politicians kind of make me unhappy. And that starts to, okay, so that's a good one. Slippery slope. What else? Anything else? What about chilling? So you mentioned this. What about chilling of other speech, right? So if you know the government is watching your speech, and we don't know the level of transparency here, but hopefully there's some transparency to this agency, this program, then it's also going to chill legitimate speech. So glorifying terrorism is one thing, but actual legitimate speech might be something else. So chilling effect on non-criminal speech on here. Right? Even if we're doing things that are legal, we still control our behavior. If you behave differently when a policeman is standing next to you than when a policeman is not standing next to you, even if you're not doing anything wrong, you're still careful. Okay, what else? Anything else? Do you worry about the people at this organization who are using this tool? Right? You don't want people stalking, right? So we're going to say analyst malfeasance. You don't want people stalking people. You don't want other misuse and abuse of power that could come from this. That should be a C in there. Okay. Okay. We get everything I had on my list. Anything else? Yeah.
What if you are a taxi driver and you listen to a conversation of your guest, which are saying exactly the same thing?
Right, so actually I would put that back in our first category, fair application of the rules, right? This is an interesting point because it gets into the question of how social media and how is social media different. And I think that's a really fascinating question that everybody needs to be talking about more because the interesting thing about social media is public information. It's put out there publicly. Yet most of us, and in particular I'm going to guess people under 40, think that just doesn't mean that everybody should get to look at it. That there is still some privacy interest even in that publicly available information. There should still be some control. So I won't get off on this tangent because I can go on for a long time. But the point is, yes, social media is different. How do we think about the different social media values? OK. So now we have some issues. So let's fix them. How many people are here are engineers? Good. Thank goodness. Because if you do this in a room full of lawyers, it's just sue, 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 sue. So you guys will be practical, which is good. This is why, by the way, even though I am a lawyer, I like the engineer title. And I always tell people this because engineers build and create, and lawyers ruin and destroy. And I can say that because I am a lawyer. All right. So now we got this capability. So remember, it wants to be able to search tweets for information that we're looking for. It wants to follow people who are retweeting. It wants to follow people who, or wants to identify people who are followers, right? So this is a common social media analytics tool, which is to figure out who the influencers are. So there may be some link analysis on here, maybe some sentiment analysis, things like that. So that's a common thing that people ask for, is sentiment analysis. So how would you design this? Now, you blank piece of paper. How would you design this to mitigate the effects that we have? So guilt by association. What could you do? All right, so I'm going to help you with this, and then this will get a creative juice. So guilt by association. One of the problems with social media right now is that we're applying old school paradigms to analyze this new school social interaction. How many people have less than 200 Facebook friends? How many people have more than 1,000 Facebook friends? Your definition of Facebook friend is going to be different than the people who have less than 200 Facebook friends, right? So for me, I have about 150 Facebook friends. I only friend people who I know personally and interact with personally. And then they're in a probationary period, and if they don't like enough of my posts, I get rid of them. I require constant validation. Other people, every time they shake hands with someone at a bar, they add them as their Facebook friend, right? So it's actually not fair to associate the same level of interaction, the same level of connection with people who have different connections, right? So what you want to do design-wise is, first of all, in your ontology, you want to make it clear that this is a social media friend. So there's ontological design elements, right? So you create, as you're graphing this, let's say you're creating a social analytics chart or graph, you might want to distinguish between Facebook or Twitter follower, I guess would be the close analogy, and maybe if you've got other intelligence sources or something like actual friend, right? And you want to make sure you're sending the analyst signal that, hey, this is not the same thing. You could also have it so that perhaps you're designing it so that the strength of the connection, so again, if you're doing a link graph, it shows you this connection between these two people. It's in darker red because each of these people have fewer Twitter followers or fewer Twitter connections than these people who have thousands of Twitter connections. And so maybe that connection between them isn't as strong. This is why I hope no one in here invented this. But this is why I thought it was so dumb, this idea that you could do credit ratings based on your Facebook friends. This was an idea that I think somebody, I don't know if it's still going on or not, but they said, hey, if your Facebook friends have bad credit, then you're probably a credit risk. I always thought that was, because again, every time there's I won't get into this. All right. I have a lot to say about social media. All right, context misunderstandings. This was the sarcasm point, right? So how do you correct this? I already kind of gave the answer to this. More data, right. So you want to actually get more data, more context. Obviously, this is a problem, right? Because now you're pulling in more information and potentially implicating more people's privacy. So this is kind of a value judgment. Which is more important to you, to the customer, whatever, figuring out the context or protecting privacy. And maybe there's clever ways. So you might do more data, but what you might also do is you might de-identify the handles for friends or for the additional data. So you've got a target, right? Your target Twitter handle, and I don't have Twitter, so I can't give you a fake Twitter handle of mine. And then, so you got that one, you have that identified, but maybe you just pull in, when you pull in the group of other people, you randomly give them a number, right? And then you can actually set up the system so that as if an analyst identifies someone that might be of interest, then they can go back and ask for that number to be re-identified. So again, discourages some of that guilt. It also discourages some of that guilt by association. But again, also protects the people and still gives you the more data that you need to apply the context. False positives. Review process. Yes, absolutely. Create an electronic workflow. Right? So make sure, so design it so that every time somebody says, I think this person is suspicious, there's a workflow that takes it through to the next level, another supervisor, somebody like that, who reviews it and says, okay, is this suspicious or is this not suspicious? And then you've got more eyes on the problem, more collaboration, so it's better analysis, which means your customer's going to like it. And then it's also hopefully protecting from somebody just making a unilateral decision on this kind of thing. You can actually even start thinking about automating. There's one of our advisors, a guy named Danny Weitzner, who's at MIT, very big name in the privacy world. He's actually building a technology called trust layers. And we've tried to use this in the case of a gang workflow with one of our law enforcement agents. So most states have laws that say you can't identify someone as a gang member without identifying X, Y, Z characteristics. So what this does is actually automates that process. And so someone was looking at the data, they say, okay, I think this person is a member of a gang because I got a picture of them flashing a gang sign, and they're connected to 14 other gang members on their Facebook profiles. This is suspicious. What this program would do, trust layers, is say, you don't have enough. You've got 2 features, but you need to have 4 features under state law, so the system is not going to let you designate this person as a gang member. Slippery slope. Thresholds, yeah. So going back to that thing, can you automate the thresholds? Just what I was talking about, the trust layers thing. Can you say, it's only you have to have this much indication? This would be hard to figure out in sort of a checkbox thing. This would be hard to do here, but it's definitely something that you could do. Another area for slippery slope. So where this is interesting is that this kind of gets into. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do. I'll talk about that in a minute because then I'll run out of things to say for chilling effect. Chilling effect. Right, so this may discourage legitimate speech. What could you do? So one thing you could do is control the search a little bit, right? And do this. Think about this engineering-wise, because this is a performance issue with your product. What you were worried about here is dragnet searches of all content of tweets, right? And so everybody's going to say, hey, if I put anything that might be remotely close to the keywords, and they'll probably use these complex keyword search that say, this word, government within 5 words of hate, and whatever the complex Boolean search structure is going to be, it's going to return a whole lot of stuff. So just don't design it that way. Design it with a predicate. You have to enter a Twitter handle or a group of Twitter handles and the phrases you're looking for, as opposed to just search by all the phrases. And then your engineering choice, which you can completely justify based on the performance of the capability, also limits how it can be used. And the potential damage that it can do. And a lot of people are going to say, this is a tension with engineers. A lot of people are going to say, well, that's not efficient, right? I know I can do it, and search is incredibly fast now, so maybe that's not actually a limitation that I can justify. But you can counter it. You can say, and this is a good engineering argument, I think, which is you can say, this is a new type of data. This is a new type of analytics. The world doesn't know how we want to handle this yet, so why don't we go slow a little bit on it? When someone invented the car, I'm sure they didn't invent the clutch and the accelerator and say, well, we'll figure out how to stop it later. These are essential components. So it's not wrong to put in limitations or to build limitations until you think you've got a place. And I'll get to this point at the end because this is sort of your responsibility as engineers. Last one, analyst malfeasance. Audit trail, boom. Exactly. So the ability to know what analysts are doing and to watch everything that's going on in the system. And they're going to want this for information security purposes anyway. But you can also be using, you're also generating data that can be used to look at, is this information being used appropriately? And audit logs, once they exist, anybody can ask for them. It depends on your oversight mechanism. We talked a little bit about this earlier with the type of government you'll look at. It depends on your oversight mechanism. Does this, is there somebody who might ask for this? Government agencies, members of Congress, whatever. So that's a quick run through, and we are almost perfect on time, which is unusual for me. So takeaways, no easy answers. This is hard. There are decisions you guys have to make as engineers in here, right? And there are no absolute right answers on any of this. And we used the hypothetical country of Fredonia at the beginning, so we were kind of working in a vacuum. Does anybody know, by the way, that was an actual news story from last week. Does anybody know what country we're talking about? Not the US. Anybody? How many people would guess it would be something like Saudi Arabia or something like that? I know the way I said it, you know that you're not. It's Spain. It was Spain. And the UK, under the Terrorism Act of 2000, has laws that prohibit the glorifying of terrorism as well. And these are countries that we would probably think of normally. Hey, easy answer. Spain, UK, of course I'll go work for them. What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly be terrible with them? So really, it is a tough question. And it is something you're going to have to think through, and you guys have a lot of autonomy and choice. You can't take the position that you are, and this is me preaching, this is Palantir preaching a little bit too. You can't take the position that you're not responsible for what you build. You live in the world that you create. You guys, whatever technologies you build, they're going to affect you, especially in spaces like social media and things like that. You can't say, this is a knife, you can use it to cut bread, you can use it to stab people, but it's not my responsibility. You have the ability to affect these things. And that's where the power of the engineers comes in. The CEO of a company, if I were the CEO of this company, I could say, build it, build it. I order you to build it. Shut up, I don't care about your ethics. I order you to build it. And you would say, I will go work for Google, Facebook, Airbnb, whatever, all these other companies that are hiring really talented engineers like me, and I don't really care what you have to say. This is one of the weird places in business where the power relationship is really shifted. The skilled technologists are the people that control it. So your ethics drive technology, which means you need to understand how to look. These questions that we just went through and ask, these are things you guys have to understand. So we're out of time for questions, which is exactly how I planned it to be. But it's lunchtime, so if you want to chat, please feel free to chat. I'm happy to do so. And thanks very much.